Hey guys, welcome to the Mom Show. I'm your host, Courtney Doyle, and this is a place I am giving you permission to not have it all together. Hey guys, welcome back to the show. Today, my guest is Missy Hurtless. And as you know, this season, we are saying, help, I'm a mom who. So, Missy, welcome to the show. And if I asked you to fill in that blank, what would you say?
I am a mom who has an adult daughter, but lived with shame of having a past abortion over 25 years ago.
And so let me ask you, Missy, did you have the abortion before your daughter was born, or was this a second pregnancy?
It was a second pregnancy. My daughter was 2 when my husband and our marriage was crumbling. And we got pregnant, and we both made the decision that this was the best thing to do. And we divorced shortly after that.
How has that decision that you said it was 25 years ago, how has that decision affected you and impacted you as a mom?
I don't know that I really realized the impact until later in life. I didn't grow up as a Christian. So when I made that choice, that decision, I knew it was wrong. It wasn't the thing to do, but it felt like a crisis that I needed to avoid. But I was able to compartmentalize and stuff that way down deep with no knowledge of what God said because I didn't grow up in it. Probably don't know that I would have not made the same decision if I had been going to church. But it affected me, and I got a divorce right after that. The statistics say when a couple makes that choice, high percentage don't stay together. That was my husband and I. I look back now, and I was very controlling as a single mom, very overprotective. So when my daughter had playmates, I always wanted them at my house. I wanted to be able to protect her, and maybe not realizing why until later in life. When I became a Christian, the secret came to the surface. God started prompting me, and I started to look back and reflect on how that decision that many years ago affected the choices and the life that I led.
Yeah. So, Missy, how do you think the two were related, the past abortion and now the controlling factor as a single mom?
And it's funny you asked that, Courtney, because I tried to figure that out too. And I would say, when I thought about the two, how they correlated was I said to myself, I will never, ever put myself in a position that I will have to make a choice like that again or a hard choice. So in my mind, if I kept everything and controlled everything in my environment, I would never have to face a decision like that again.
Yeah,
Is the way I looked at that.
yeah, and it makes sense. There's there's so much silence and shame around abortion. And so it's one of those things that, when the Roe versus Wade, when that was all in the courts just a few years ago, I found it so interesting, and I think you'll probably be able to relate to this, that you had your pro-life activists that are screaming from the rooftops, this is a life at conception, and all the truth that we know as Christians and biblically, and the foundation of how God created man and woman. But then you have your extreme opposites, and they're screaming, it's not life. You shouldn't have a baby if you can't afford a baby, all the things. But what I found so interesting during that time, and I bet you're going to know what I'm talking about, is the survivors of abortion, very few are speaking out. So you've got the pro-lifers that maybe have never had an abortion and they're screaming from the rooftops, you can't do this, you're a murderer, yada yada. And then you've got your others that are pro-choice, and they maybe have, not all. I'm not lumping everybody into one category. I'm just saying that I find that the majority of the people that are staying silent are the women who have abortion in their past, and they don't fit in either category because they can't be the pro-life because they've already made the choice, but they know they don't ever want to make that choice again. And so I think with that fuels even more shame and more silence because you're like, I don't fit in either category here. I'm a hypocrite in both categories. What would you say to the woman who's listening that says, that's me? I don't fit in any category. And because I don't, I'm shamed and I'm in a box and I'm quiet about this. And I really can't tell anyone what's happened.
Yeah, oh, Courtney, I know exactly where you're going with that. And I felt like I was not, how could I be pro-life, though I am, when I made that choice? I was pro-choice evidently because made that choice. But I think when I walk through the study, my healing study that I went through, we talk about being pro-love. That's what I would share with a woman, that this is not about the shame of the abortion. This is about love. And God loves us so much. And what he did for us on the cross covered that sin along with all the other sins. And though it was so hard for me to accept that, that being pro-love, because I have a hard time saying it now. I'm pro-life. How can I say that when I made that choice? I walk that every day. So I like
Yeah.
to say that I'm pro-love. I have the love for that baby, but I have the love for that lady who walked in those doors. They walked in the doors with people standing out front with signs, those awful signs. Sometimes
Mm.
there's people on the sidewalk now that are giving great information, that they're not screaming those ugly things or holding those ugly signs. But for that woman that walks into that clinic, when she walks out, no one's there. I want to be there. That's where I call the pro-love. I want to be there for that woman that's made that decision, because I was. And when I walked out of that clinic, I felt so alone, and that I was the
Yeah.
only one ever that made that choice.
And that is the way the enemy speaks to us when we have made that choice. You and I talked off camera before we started, and I shared that with you. I spent 30 plus years in complete silence about my past. And I couldn't reconcile any of it, even though I was raised in church. I always knew right from wrong. I was raised in a very strict denomination. As a matter of fact, I was raised being taught that murder was a mortal sin. And that's what I was. And that's what society said that I was. And so I was basically doomed to hell, period. End of story, based on my childhood upbringing. And it wasn't until I was well into adulthood that I was set straight on that's not really the truth. And that was where I began to find some freedom. But I found freedom initially in my relationship with the Lord. Like I knew I was forgiven. I knew that He loved me. I knew the sacrifice that He made on that cross. I knew that my sin hung on that cross with Him. I knew all of that, right? I knew it deep in my heart as well. It wasn't just a head knowledge, it was a heart knowledge. But there was still something about holding the secret that consumed me. And so, I want to ask you, how did you move from secrecy to sharing?
Yeah, I moved from secrecy to sharing with all of God's prompting along the way, because I didn't understand why he brought this secret up that I had held for so long. I finally
Hmm.
become a Christian, I get saved, and he starts bringing it up. And he
Hmm.
brought it up to me in a way that what I felt like he said is, you need to share with other women because I need you to help other women. I'm like, why do I need to I don't want to think about this. But it continued for a few years, and I just got on the internet and started Googling. I don't even know what I'm Googling: abortion,
Mm.
healing, and I find Surrendering the Secret. That's the first one that came up. And it was a
Yeah.
healing study, a Bible study for healing the heartbreak of abortion. So I reached out to Surrendering the Secret to see if I could lead, because God was prompting me to
Yeah.
help other women. So I do, and they come back and say, "Oh, we're glad that you're interested, but this was pre-COVID. This was 2017, and we're glad that you're interested, but we don't have anybody in your area that's facilitating." And I said, "Okay, that's my sign. God,
Yeah.
put it back down there." And he said, "Okay, I will," for a short period of time. And then he continued to prompt me, Courtney. And
Mm.
after COVID, the virtual world opens up. I reach back out to Surrendering the Secret, and they say, yes, we have virtual options now. And I signed up for leader training. Again, mind you, I thought I was okay. I didn't know the deep struggle I had. So I signed up for leader training. And thank goodness after the training, they said, you can't lead a training, you can't facilitate as a trainer unless you've walked through the study. And I said, okay. Well, God got me right where he wanted me, because he
Yeah.
led me. I went through that healing study having no idea that the healing that I needed.
Mm.
So I came out of there a transformed woman,
Yeah.
because as you explained earlier, I had the head knowledge I was forgiven, because becoming a Christian later in life, all this is new. You ask for forgiveness, you're forgiven. But I
Right.
didn't feel it in my heart. Like I sat in
Hmm.
church and would describe me seeing Jesus through a sheer curtain. I could see
Mm.
him, but he wasn't there for me. He was there for everyone else sitting around me. So I sat for years like that. So when
Yeah.
he finally got me to where I went through my healing study and then I started facilitating. So now I lead women through the study. I look back and I'm like, God got me right where he wanted me in a way that now see, we ran a business. I was in leadership. I think he knew, all right, I'll get you there thinking you're going to lead people. But in the meantime, I'm gonna walk you through this healing. Yeah, I
Hmm.
got through to the healing process all because of God. He just kept prompting me and he kept telling me, I need you to share.
Yeah. Yeah. I shared with you also before we hit record that I have pretty much been an open book with the majority of my testimony. It's why I do this podcast. The original name of the podcast was Masquerade of Motherhood because it's hiding behind the lies that we believe and the comparison and all the things. And it was after I had started this podcast, very shortly after, that I'm interviewing moms and I'm asking them to unmask their lies, their secrets, their shame, their guilt, their anxiety. And God very gently said, "What about you? What about unmasking you?" And I had made an agreement back in my 20s whenever I knew that he had called me to some sort of ministry. I was like, I will share everything, Lord. I want people to know you, to love you. Look what you've done in my life. It's just incredible. I'll share everything but that. You've healed me. I'm forgiven. I feel good about this. And that's one of those things that can stay in a nice little package in the back of the room and it doesn't have to be part of my public testimony. And similar to you, shortly after COVID, I had been going through some pretty serious health issues and they could not put their finger on it. And one of my doctors said, I really think you need to take a step back in multiple areas of your life, maybe saying no to some things and just resting. What does rest look like for you? And I was like, that looks like the enemy is what it looks like because I don't want to slow down. I can't slow down. I've got all these kids, all these responsibilities, but I was forced to because I was just so darn sick. And I want to say I quit everything one weekend, and by the next weekend, God just started prompting, what about this? What about healing from this? And I was like, but I'm healed. I'm forgiven. But I did exactly what you're saying that you did. And I was like, okay, I'm just gonna Google, let's look into it. And I came up with the same study. And so I did it at that point, it was virtual. I did it on my own though. I didn't do it in a group. I ran through the whole study, I want to say in a week. I blew through it and was shocked at the ways that I was not healed and the next steps that I needed to take. And so, very similar stories in me thinking, I'm just going to share my testimony. I'm going to lead other women to Jesus. I want to be so vulnerable. And God saying, but are you being vulnerable about all the parts and all the secrets that other women need to hear? Which it's very exposing. You
It
understand
is.
that. It's very scary because it comes with what we think is a perceived judgment of what are people going to think when they know. And let me ask you this, as a mom, having that in your past, did you question ever what the value of your motherhood, whether you were a good mom or not, because you had made that choice that many years ago?
I don't think I did at the beginning. So my daughter was 2 when I made that choice. And it probably wasn't until I became a Christian and God just reminded me, and I really saw the truth in the decision that I made. And I saw a lot of lies that were told. Even though I had a
Hmm.
child, there's still a lot of lies that come at you.
Yeah.
Hurry up and do it. But then when I found out the truth, yeah, that was part of it. And that might be a part of why God was prompting me to walk through the healing too, because then I did question, like, how in the world did you make that decision? You have a beautiful daughter
Yeah.
and you took her sibling and you
Mm.
took my mom's grandchild. My mother
Mhm.
knew when I was pregnant and she begged me not to. And so my mom just passed away about a year and a half ago, but she was aware of what I was doing and sharing my testimony in hopes that I can just help other women. But she
Mhm.
knew, and the father of the child knew, and that was all. And I tucked that secret away for over 25 years.
And once you found complete healing, was it a conversation you then had with your daughter?
Yes, actually, I'd had the conversation prior to my healing with my daughter.
Okay.
It came about in not a way that I would like it to come about, but the conversation came up and I did share that with her. So then after I walked through my healing, I was very upfront with her on what I was doing and now and being very public about it. She
Mhm.
supports me 100%. I partner with our pregnancy resource center here. So I've spoke at their gala. So she's been there and supporting me, but it's still very hard for me to look at her and say, I'm so sorry. I took a sibling from you. But yeah,
Mhm.
she's very supportive.
Yeah. I remember when I sat down with my children, I was most afraid to tell them. And one of the reasons is because I have, like you said about controlling, one of my biggest things with my kids is don't lie to me. I don't want you to lie to me. Like we can get through anything, but just don't lie about it. And I had to sit them down and confess that I've raised you with mom's core value. And what is mom's core value? Like one, just give me the one that I'm always preaching to you. And they're like, don't lie. And I was like, yeah, I have to come to you as the biggest liar in the family at this point. And they were just like, what are you talking about? And so it was confessing that I felt like such a hypocrite that I've tried to preach and teach you to not be liars, yet I've spent 30 plus years living a lie and a secret. And I can honestly tell you, though, as I confess that to my children, the love, I cannot even explain it. Like, God equipped them to literally be his hands and feet in that moment because just there was no judgment. There was no, we don't forgive you. There was no, how could you? It was just, like you said, it was pure love. And they then were able to minister to me all the things that I had raised them believing about the Lord and about my love for them and his love for them. They flipped it on its head and they were like, wait, hold on a minute, mom. You know the truth. And then they spoke truth and life over me. And I don't know if this is how you felt, but the minute it was no longer a secret, Satan had no place at all. It was like the minute it was spoken out loud, the shame, the guilt, the heaviness that I felt over that story was gone, lifted. Did you have a similar experience?
Absolutely. I would
Yeah.
say that when I went through my healing, I then started facilitating, like I shared, but I still hid behind a little bit of a curtain by doing it virtually. I led it
Mhm.
virtually, that I would never see these women. I didn't know them, though I saw the transformation happen, and that's what God called me to. He kept saying, I need you to go into your community. And I said, but I don't want to because
Mhm.
I know I've been at this same church for 20 years. These
Yeah.
people know me, as this, and I don't want him to know me as this. But he said, I have you, I've got you. And so he led me to had the gentleman at our church that does audio visual. He did my testimony in a 4 or 5 minute, and they showed it at church. And wow, I just remember that day thinking, oh
Mm.
goodness, what
Yeah.
I would have that little bit of Satan going, just wait, you're going to get
Mhm.
some comments. But then I had this big voice saying, I got you, I got you.
Yeah.
And Courtney, I went to church that day. They showed it. We have an 8:30, a 10, and 11:15 service. So I went to the 10 service. So when I walked in, the people from 8:30 were just leaving the church. I had nothing but arms wrapped around me. I had one
Mhm.
gentleman say, Missy, this is what we need to start doing in church. We need to share our stories. He said, my wife has had this same experience and she's been living in shame and secrecy. And I
Right.
had nothing but love. But a little bit of that, and during our study we'll talk about keeping that secret. Like, think about it, really, who are you protecting by keeping that secret? Who are we protecting? So yeah, I totally know what you mean, but like I said, it's just once I shared that, I felt that all lifted and God going, okay, that's one step. Now I need you to take another step. And then it was share it on my social media. So I have probably a little over 1,000 friends on my social media, some being family that didn't even know my story.
Yeah.
I made sure I reached out to my immediate family so that it was not a surprise, and had great conversation with my family. But just about the last month, I put it out on my social media and I had nothing but my daughter was actually more fearful. She said, Mama, I'm so proud of you, but what
Yeah.
happens if you get a ugly comment? And I said,
Yeah.
God's got this, honey. And she's okay. And I really
Mhm.
got nothing but love. I got private messages from people that said, I wish my daughter would reach out to you because she has this in her past. And
Yeah.
so it's nothing but an opportunity to share what God's done in my life. And
Mhm.
that's the only reason that I'm
Yeah.
like here today, to share my story strictly for his glory, because the healing, the transformation that takes place is just incredible.
Yeah. And I think that, like you and I said, this was something that you don't even realize you need healing from. And sometimes that can go years. For me, it was 30 plus years, 35 plus years that I really felt like I'm a good chunk of that. I felt I'm healed, I'm fine. But the reality is, we're not fine. We're not okay. There are things in surrendering the secret, it talks about the PTSD and things that trigger that shame and that guilt and those feelings that I know that until I did the study, I did not connect the two. I did not know that some of the ways I was behaving were directly linked to that trauma from my past. One of the other things that surprised me is how we are such marvelous creatures, and there were so many memories that I had suppressed. And I didn't even realize, wow, that I was doing that and how it was affecting me emotionally and spiritually and physically. I was actually just sharing with my son the other day. We were talking about sharing this story. I've had a headache disorder since I was in high school, and they would get really bad, and they would last just weeks and weeks. And that was why I was so sick right before I did the study. And I had gone from 6 weeks of these headaches to 8 weeks. So then we were at 20 something weeks. And my doctor was like, I don't know. Like, it's never lasted this long. You need to start saying no to some things. And I did. And that was what led to me having some downtime. And then God spoke so loudly. It was like, let's unmask this. And I did the study. I confessed it to my children, and I think I had 2 headaches after the confession, and I have now gone 4 years, 4 years. And so I I I'm not too sure that some of the suffering that I was doing physically with the headaches was not directly related to the quiet stress and shame and the tension that my body was holding as I was holding that secret. It would be hard for somebody to convince me different at this stage of the game.
Yeah, and you hear secrets make us sick. It takes a lot of work to keep it a secret. I remember we had a life group. My husband and I facilitated a life group at our church, and across the hall was another life group, and they were doing, CareNet has a study called Making Life Disciples. And so what this life group was doing was learning about how to have conversations with people that are a woman or a man that are in unplanned pregnancy. It's a pro-life organization, life group. And
Okay.
they were across the hall from us. I couldn't look in the room. I had to get away from, I couldn't listen to what they were saying. That to me, that's when I knew, I'm like, there's something not right here. I can't be
Mhm.
faced. That word, it became so politicized. Every time that word came up, I just felt the tension.
Mhm.
And this was before I went through my healing. But sometimes you don't relate it to that till
Yeah.
after, and you can reflect back and say, that's why I was running from everything.
Mhm.
Somebody wanted to have
Mhm.
that conversation in our life group. I would have to go to the bathroom at that time because I don't want to talk
Mhm.
about that. I don't want to hear about it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Or sitting at dinner. How many dinners have you sat with people and they have voiced their opinion on those people who have had abortions? And you're sitting across the table, and it could be loved ones, it could be family, it could be really close friends, and you're sitting at the table. The statistics say that 1 in 4 women, church going women,
Yes.
have had an abortion. Think about that. That's a lot of women. And that's a lot of women that are holding that secret and are holding that tension. And and it's a really sad space to be in because you're held hostage by your own poor decisions. And I don't know, I can't really think of any other situation that holds you so hostage. With abortion, this is you. It's all on you. It was your body, right? Everybody's screaming your body, your
Yeah.
choice. Yeah, it was. It was. And even though my situation was in the throes of an abusive relationship, I don't want to divulge too much out of that situation, but it just didn't matter, Missy. It didn't matter. And I'm sure you maybe would feel the same way. Like your ex husband was part of that, but that doesn't make it better what has happened to you.
Right. I took all of the blame. And
Yeah.
as we walk through the study, we talk about one of the biggest hurdles I had and the women going through the study is I cannot forgive myself. And I struggle with that. And every lady that comes through the class, I hear the same thing. And I'll finally say, you know what, you're right. And I told myself, you're right, I can't, but I can accept the forgiveness that he's given me. So I keep having to remind myself of that when the enemy comes at
Hmm.
you, because he does.
Oh,
Um,
sure.
but what Jesus did on the cross covered that sin too, though I felt like forever that it just couldn't. That was the unforgivable sin.
Yeah.
But I finally, once I walked through this study and realized all of the truth. I would explain it. I have a lady that went through my class, and maybe it was like the third or fourth week. And I said, just give me, when we got back together, I said, give me one word of how you're feeling right now. Now, mind you, this is an 8 week study, and we're in like the third week. And she said, you know what, Missy, I just feel like I'm walking a little taller. My posture's
Mm.
better. And because I think for years we walk with our head down. I mean, it reflects in our posture of how we're feeling.
Mhm.
And to see the transformation that takes place, I always say I would love to take a picture from the first session of the ladies that walk in to the
Yeah.
last session, and they walk out with their head held high, knowing who they are in Christ.
Yeah.
Not who people say they are or what that Satan keeps telling us we are, but who they are in Christ.
Yeah. I remember, so I did it by myself, like I said, just me and the study. And then later I joined a group and I went in person because I knew that there were parts of the study that really, like you needed to do it in person. You
Yeah.
needed to do it with a group. And oh my gosh, I went to a local church on a Wednesday night. And so the church is buzzing, right? Everybody's in Bible studies, there's kids everywhere. And I remember walking in the church and thinking everybody was going to know which study I was going to. And, oh my gosh, if you go through those doors, is that the study where those women? And at this point, I definitely had a lot more freedom and healing, but it was still that anxiety of I'm going to be exposed. And I remember walking in the room and sitting down, but exactly what you're saying, watching the other women who were coming in, and I felt like I was a few steps ahead of them because I had done it once, but watching just their countenance and the sadness that they carried and the defeat that they carried, and then slowly realizing, wait, I am loved, I am forgiven. God can use this pain for a purpose. It was transforming to watch the healing, the physical healing of like just I can be okay and I am okay. And so I guess that's the next thing I want to do is I want to talk to the listener who's saying, yeah, hey, that's great for y'all that you're willing to share all of this, but I'm still sitting in my pain and I don't know that there's purpose in this pain. What's one way that they could begin to trust God with this very intimate, difficult story?
I think a good first step is to reach out to a healing study like Surrendering the Secret. There's other ones out there, but Surrendering the Secret is my heart. That's the healing that I found. But if they'll reach out and connect with a community that understands what they're going through, The first part of the healing is, for one, just to be able to say it and start that conversation. And if you can reach out and connect with, again, Surrendering the Secret or many others, start that conversation. I think you'll see that pain start to turn into that purpose. Is it joining a healing study? Is it having a conversation with someone to just share your story? That's huge. If you know, that's the first step in healing, just because we've kept it tucked away so long. I don't know if you think about, you want to have a hard conversation, and the first time you share it, I remember after I did my healing, I had a best friend that I knew. She didn't know my story, but she was very judgmental, and I was scared to death to tell her. And when I sat down and finally, and we don't force that, you let God orchestrate that conversation as much as I wanted to force it. We sat down for lunch, the subject came up, and I said, my friend, I made that decision. And she just was so upset and said, did I ever say anything that hurt you? And I said, you didn't say anything I didn't need to hear, because every time something like that would be said, whether a judgmental, it was God saying, you're not healed. I need you to heal. I want you to heal because I got a plan for you. So I think the first step would just be reaching out, looking for help, sharing. Start that conversation, because there is hope and healing available.
You're so right. I think if you can, it just because we're on this platform and we're sharing this difficult story, God doesn't call everybody to share publicly like this, but sharing with one person can absolutely make a difference. And so you're right. Find the one person or the one family member that you can trust, and you may be surprised at how loving they're going to be. I would say 10 times out of 10, when you
Yeah.
share that, somebody's going to love you, because at the end of the day, if they love you, they don't want to know that you have been hiding in this kind of pain. It's just not, it's not something people that love you want to know that you're struggling with. They want to be there for you. And I do. I know that we've talked about surrendering the secret several times, but I cannot thank Pat Layton enough for being brave enough to share her story and to write this study, because it is absolutely life changing. I've seen it happen in my life, and I've witnessed it in other people's lives. And you're a testimony to seeing it in other women's lives. And so it's so beautifully written, and it takes us back to the feet of Jesus. It's not about what we did in our past and staying stuck in that past. It's about how do we progress forward, and how do we really embrace the true love that he has for us.
I just want to say too, I am so with you, Courtney. As far as Pat Layton, I am just so thankful for her that she was obedient to what God called her to do, and has continued to do that. She has transformed my life in her obedience, and she continues to do it. So I'm so thankful for her.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you continue to guard your heart from feeling guilty and leaning into grace?
I continue to guard my heart, just praying, listening to God, to make sure I'm not putting myself in an unsafe situation where it could come back to hurt. Not that it may happen, but I keep reminding myself who I am in Christ, and who he created me to be. And that I feel very called to raise the awareness that there's many people sitting in church, outside of church, feeling the way that I felt for years. And I would say that there's many unhealthy Christians serving in church today. And I say that because I was one of them. I was teaching Sunday school. I was running our youth athletic. And though I think I didn't let that seep in, I could do that and then come home and live with this burden and this shame, you know?
Yeah.
So just keep reminding myself where God's brought me to, who I am in him, and being able to share that love and just share with whoever I can that needs to hear it.
Yeah.
God also brought to me that I was having a little boy. I didn't know for sure, but that's what he brought me as going through Surrendering the Secret. So I just lost my mom a year and a half ago. Now my mom knew, But I could just imagine her rejoicing with her grandson in heaven, because she was such a woman of God. But when my mom passed, that I had the vision of a reunion, my mom and her grandson.
Yeah.
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 You and I are recording the day after Easter, and I think it's just such an appropriate time to remind the listeners that what Jesus did for us on that cross, every sin that you may be carrying, every burden that you're feeling, it died on that cross with him. And 3 days later, when he rose again, he rose to new life. And because of his death, he gives us new life, even in our sinful moments, even in our guilt and our shame of choices that we've made in the past. And I believe with 100% certainty, Missy, that in order to find true healing from these traumatic things that have happened in our lives, we can only do that through our faith in Jesus Christ and knowing the pure love that he has for us, no matter what has happened. And so I just wanted a listener to know that your first step to healing is confess it to Jesus first. Like he was there. You're not taking him by surprise, right?
Right.
He was right there with you. But I think speaking it to him and letting him know how hurt you are by it, then letting him prompt you on the healing. He's going to prompt you on that one person that you need to share it
Yes.
with. He's going to send you to the study that's going to help you find complete healing. And so I hope somebody that's listening that maybe is like, this secret is making me sick and I don't know how to share it. Your information, my information, of course, are all going to be linked in the show notes. And of course, a link to Surrendering the Secret. But I close out every session with asking, what are you praying for? And is there a verse that you could share with the listeners?
Yeah, I'm praying now that if there's any women out there, whether listening or just wherever that hears this message, that they know that they're not alone, and that if they're struggling with this past choice, that there is hope and healing available. Take that step, reach out, seek the healing. And I would leave you with this my favorite Bible verse, and this was after I went through Surrendering the Secret. I have my life verse, but this Revelation 12:11 speaks where I'm at right now, and it's what God led me to. Revelation 12:11 says, "We overcome the enemy by the blood of Jesus and the word of our testimony." So I encourage you, that is the only reason I'm giving my testimony, is that I want you to see how much he loves you and he wants you healed. He's got a purpose and a plan for your life. And if you're like me, I couldn't see that when I was hiding in shame and guilt. So I just leave you with that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your willingness to come on and share your hard story, but mostly to share your healing journey, because I know that there are others out there that need to hear that they have that kind of hope as well. And so thank you for your time and for your willingness.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to The Mom Show with Courtney Doyle. Remember to check the show notes for any links, books, or resources that are mentioned in each episode. We want to be sure this blesses other mothers, and in order to do this, if you're listening via podcast, be sure that you like and share. If you could write a review, that would be fantastic. It helps us get in front of other moms. If you're watching via YouTube, be sure to hit that subscribe button. This way, you won't ever miss an episode. We want to make sure that we increase our reach to other mothers who need a little encouragement, a community, and a whole lot of Jesus. We're so glad you're here.